Lately, I have begun a series from this book. I'd like to say it was written by Father Robert Nixon, but he actually translated the visions of Saint Francis of Rome. This is her visions of hell, purgatory, and heaven revealed. And he was a guest on my podcast, and what he read was traumatizing, had me cover my mouth with some of the sins of particular souls. So I do not want to talk too much, but I want to read to you what today the particular torments of those who commit the seven deadly sins. My purpose on doing this series is for people to realize that heaven is real, hell is also real. It is not just some spiritual desert where you don't get to see God. It is so much torturously more than that, and purgatory is real. So St. Francis was taken to these places. Her guardian angel Raphael stood at her side and helped her to take in what she saw. And everything she saw was way more horrific than could be put into words. So what was translated as accurately as possible for the first time from the Latin, the original language as she wrote it into English, are the details of these certain vices. So again, I'm going to read from the chapter that says the particular torments for those who commit the seven deadly sins. Sorry, I'll put my book here. It reads, next, Francis was transported to an area of hell where punishments were given for each of the seven deadly sins, which are also known as the seven capital vices. These torments were particularly adapted to the sins or vices to which they pertained. First, she saw the souls which had fallen prey to the vices of pride and ambition. These souls were congregated together in one large chamber. This large chamber was subdivided into smaller sections according to the particular form or expression of pride which each soul was guilty. Since of these there are very many. For example, those souls which had been infected by an excessive desire for praise or adulation while they lived in the world were tormented by a horde of sharp-tongued demons who poured out an incessant torrent of acerbic invectives and humiliating mockery upon them. Similarly, there were other torments suited to the various other forms of pride and sinful ambition. But all the souls who were confined to this region were afflicted by one particular beast who roamed freely about the whole area. This creature was in the form of a lion, but fashioned from burning metal. When it opened its mouth, it revealed rows of razor-sharp teeth. Opening its mouth still wider, it was possible to see a numberless multitude of writhing serpents and venomous toads which dwelled within the beast's throat and stomach. The cruel demons who served in this region would seize the souls condemned to punishment there and toss them into the mouth of the great lion. After receiving bloody wounds from its razor-like teeth, they would pass into the animal's throat and stomach and there be tormented by the venom of the noisome reptiles and amphibians which abode therein. Finally, they would be expelled through the posterior orifice of the demonic lion, covered with dirt and dung. After suffering this ultimate pain and humiliation, these souls who had once been guilty of pride and arrogance would blaspheme horribly, cursing both their fate and their very existence. And all the while, the demons who served in this region would pour out tirades of derision on those souls guilty of pride. They would say, "Oh, wretched and arrogant souls, while you were in the world, you fought against everyone and everything for your own advancement and glorification. Now you have as your companion and tormentor this most formidable and ferocious feline, this lion of the desert. Be content with his company now and for all eternity." The angel Raphael then explained to St. Francis that this lion was, in fact, the soul of Muhammad. Francis, the handmaid of Christ, then beheld the souls of those who had allowed themselves to be mastered by the vice of wrath. These were all being punished with particular torments matching their individual form of anger, irritability, or irascibility. But the common form of suffering which these wrathful souls experienced was that they were all gathered together in one place, in which there was a monstrous serpent that appeared to be made of living fiery metal. It had a large and open hood, like that of a cobra, and glared down from above with angry eyes, glowing furiously like burning embers. Its neck was curved forward, so that the hood formed a kind of immense arc. From its hood there protruded innumerable iron barbs, razor sharp and blazingly hot. And the demons seized the soul of those who had been guilty of wrath and hurled them towards the head of this angry serpent, so that they collided violently with the piercing barbs in the hood. But once they had landed there, other demons would extract their souls from the chest of the demonic cobra, so that the entire procedure could be repeated again and again. And these tormented souls, now made victims of the vice to which they were prone, did not cease, like all the others, to cry out in blasphemous and resentful agony. Next, Francis, led on once more by the Archangel Raphael, was taken to the place of punishment for those souls who had been infected by greed and avarice. In this place, there was a multitude of vipers with curved, pointed fangs and clawed hands, or talons, extending from their side. These vipers would greedily seize upon each soul with their fangs and clasp the soul firmly with its piercing talons. Meanwhile, it would repeatedly strike them across the mouth and cheeks with its tail, using this in the manner of a whip or scourge. In this place, there was also a huge abyss which was filled with molten gold and silver. Fittingly, the souls of the avaricious would be plunged into this gleaming but scalding liquid. Meanwhile, the demons who inhabited the region would scoff sarcastically, saying, "Oh, wretched and greedy souls, your thirst for gold and silver was insatiable while you lived. Now you may enjoy having your fill." Upon witnessing all of these horrors, Frances, now pallid with terror, began to tremble with fear and astonishment. But her companion, the Archangel Raphael, urged her to be strong and to not let her confidence waver. And having thus encouraged her, they proceeded to the next location, which was to be revealed to the saint, the place where those souls which had become infected with the pernicious vice of envy received their just deserts. Here there was a multitude of writhing, venomous worms. One of these would enter into the mouth of each envious soul and make its way down into the heart. There it would gnaw away persistently, while pouring forth freely its corrosive and noxious saliva. Meanwhile, a demon standing by would thrust its claw deep into the viscera of the victim, holding firmly the esophagus and the intestine just below the heart, thereby preventing the venomous worm from escaping. After a while, the demons would then tear out the heart itself, still with the dreadful worm of envy writhing within it. It was the place of torments reserved for those souls who had been guilty of the vice of sloth that Francis was shown next. These slothful souls were all seated on an immense stone square, finished like the top of a gigantic column. They seemed to be uniformly dejected and depressed, with their heads inclined toward the stony floor and their arms hanging limply by their sides. But they were permitted no rest whatsoever, for there were many demons who were ceaselessly pushed and prodded them about, preventing them from ever being able to remain still or sit down, even for a single moment. Moreover, there were other demons present, who were equipped with sharp swords. They would slash those hapless souls in their sides, causing gaping, open wounds to appear. Then another demon would pour boiling oil into the wound, saying, "This is for the presumptuous hope you had, making you believe that no effort was required on your part at all to attain salvation." After this, another demon would thrust a handful of writhing worms into the same wound, saying, These are for all the vain and empty thoughts that you cultivated and which festered like worms in your slothful hearts and minds during your times of lazy leisure and indolent idleness. Frances was shocked to see this, but she took comfort and courage from the presence of the Archangel Raphael. Before she had fully recovered from the horror of these sights, she was taken to the place where souls infected with the vice of gluttony were punished. The souls, though separated from their original earthly bodies, were given very fat corporeal forms of burdensome weight and egregious flabbiness. A demon there would drag these souls over red-hot coals, and then another would bind them up tightly with ropes which cut deeply into their flaccid flesh. From there, these gluttonous souls were cast into a deep pit filled with steaming pitch. Other demons there would then force their mouths open and pour into these orifices copious quantities of wine, which was heated to boiling. And then they would stuff a multitude of small, noxious serpents into it. While they did this, they would exclaim with sinister glee, "Oh, greedy and gluttonous wretches, you glutted yourselves with wine and food while you lived until you grew bloated and obese. Now you can have your fill and more. Enjoy imbibing this boiling wine and consuming these tasty serpents. Yes, these delectable and diabolical delicacies will be your feast now and forevermore." And upon concluding this taunting mockery, they would erupt in howls of insane, morbid laughter and fiendish, discordant cachinnations. Close by, there was another place of equally macabre torment. Here were a vast number of souls bound by ropes to a huge metal globe or sphere. This globe was heated to fiery intensity so that it glowed with a dull, pulsating redness. Its surface was not smooth, but rather of the jagged and tearing roughness of coarse sandpaper. The souls who were punished there were those who had fallen prey to the vice of lust. Raphael explained to Frances that they were located in close proximity to those souls who were guilty of gluttony, since lust very often arises as a consequence of habitual overindulgence in food and wine, and therefore may rightfully be considered as the neighbor and kinsman to that vice. There was a certain hideous demon there that approached these souls which had been bound to the serrated sphere. This demon, whose leering countenance bore an expression of the most vile and indiscriminate lasciviousness, had a tongue of enormous size, which hung from its thick-lipped mouth, almost reaching the ground. This tongue, like the metallic globe, was roughly serrated, and it was covered with vicious and acidic saliva, which glistened horribly. With this huge, slobbering tongue, this depraved demon would lick the bodies of the souls who had been guilty of lust in a lecherous and perversely amorous, but nevertheless heartlessly cruel manner. This disgusting procedure, reflecting the true and bestial nature of lust, which cares not for the happiness of the other, but only for the gratification of the sinful self, was both utterly revolting and indescribably painful. I don't know about you, but just hearing these things makes you realize that the four final things are true: death, judgment, heaven, hell. And if you get heaven, you most likely will get purgatory as well, as will I, because we need to wash off the stain of our sins. Our God is a merciful God, but he's also a just God. There are repercussions, stains that need to be washed away for the pains that we cause and the ripple effects throughout eternity. And so the punishments also have to clean up those stains Right now, I'm reading from hell. St. Francis also got visions of purgatory, and I will get to those in future videos. But I ask you to pray. Ask the Lord to whom you should share this video. Ask the Lord to whom you should give this information. And perhaps it was for you. Perhaps there is a sin or two a vice or two that I just read about that you consistently confess. Praise God, you confess it, but know your punishments. Stop. Stop the gluttony. Stop the sloth. Stop the lust. Stop the envy. You know who you are. I know who I am, and I don't want to suffer any of what I just read. I hope you're the same. God bless you for listening. Thank you for sharing. And no matter how difficult it might be to hear these truths, never forget to live your life sunny side up.